And talking about that domestic audience back at home, specifically the audience inside Iran itself, a hospital has shared more than 75 sets of medical images, including X-rays and CT scans, with The Guardian, explaining that these images were taken over one single evening during the regime's crackdown on anti-regime protesters in January. Now, it's estimated that tens of thousands of demonstrators were brutally murdered during that unrest, but there is still no official death toll at this stage, and it's unlikely that there will be one. And Yaakov, Lappin, that brings us to the question of the impact right now, while these talks continue, indirect talks, and there's likely to be potentially another round down the line, what this means for the Iranian people waiting to see how it all unfolds, and asking the question, if the US does in fact strike, how does it actually impact the lives of Iranians right now?
This is the key question, Benita, because we do have a conundrum here, and that is that military power, when we're talking about air power or naval power, in and of itself is not sufficient to bring down a regime. And we don't know of many cases in history where only that has brought down a regime. What you need is somebody on the ground to capitalize on a regime that's hit from the air in order to continue and to topple the centers of power. Right now, we don't have that. We have, millions of unarmed Iranians, and they are traumatized sitting at home after the massacre, the crime against humanity that the regime has leveled on them last month in the space of 2 days. And so, the question of how another strike, if it happens, would impact them is totally unclear. What we would want to see is some sort of armed, proper resistance organization in Iran that knows how to function with command and control, go after the nodes of power, convince parts of the Iranian army to defect. If we start seeing something like that on the ground, then the air and naval power starts to make sense as a regime changer. But without that ground presence, airstrikes on their own are not enough usually, we see in history, to bring a regime down, especially not one the size of Iran, with its vast population and territory. And so this raises the bigger question of what is the goal of the strike? Because if it's regime change, nobody's promising the Trump administration that they're going to achieve that. But if it's to force the Iranians back into negotiations, if they break down, that might happen. This is the issue. We need clarity on what the goal of the strike will be.